let's get our whips out, get our hat on. And,
get your whips out for the lads. Get your whips out for the lads.
Oh.
Hello, you are listening to Off Radar, It's a Movie podcast. I'm James Smith, a professional film and video editor.
I'm James Eatock, a freelance writer and illustrator specialising in 1980s cartoons.
And I'm Neil Brock, aka Nige, the man with two names, former film journalist and currently working in the games industry.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all three of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone and let you all know exactly what we thought of it.
I'd never really had any interest in watching it and I was proved absolutely right.
I think it's amazing. I really, really love this film.
The film's still a pile of steaming dog shit.
If you fancy joining in and suggesting a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at Offradar Podcast
or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, and by all means, leave a review.
For now, strap in, turn the volume up, and let's go Off Radar. Hello, and welcome back. Series 5 of Off Radar. I'm James Smith. Joined by James Eatock.
Hello.
And Neil Brock.
Hello.
Oh, I thought you were going to do... I don't know what. I thought you were going to do something.
Yeah, me neither. That's why I couldn't do it. It's like, what? I'll do my best Harrison Ford impression.
That was...
Hi, I'm Harrison Ford. That's pretty good.
No, it's at Harrison.
Yeah. I think he's got a reputation for being quite a grumpy old man, hasn't he? Like offset and stuff.
I don't know, man. Like, probably the shit he's had to put up with in his life from like Star Wars fans and
yeah, give him a fucking break, man.
Yeah, the money probably helps, but you know, at the same time, Christ, some of these actors, this kind of shit they have to go through. God,
bless them, bless them. So yeah, as you,
Andy's married to Ally McBeal, so there you go.
Oh, he is, isn't he? I forgot about that.
Ally McCoy,
Callista Flockhart.
Ally McCoy.
Don't mention it.
We can't get this film.
Like, continuity-wise, we can't.
We've got one shot of glory. Let's get on with it.
One shot of glory, and we're going to take it on a film called Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which came out in 2023. It totally, obviously, flopped at the box office, but did we go and see it? Yeah, it really did. It really did flop at the box office.
Well, it still made more than it cost.
Did it?
I reckon if you had marketing, probably not.
Maybe because it came out in a year where, obviously, Barbenheimer kind of took off. It kind of
Super Mario Brothers.
It felt like it got left behind.
No, what I'm saying is, like, in terms... Yeah, Super Mario Brothers did amazing. Did $1 billion at the box office, yeah.
It strikes me like it's a film, obviously, that hinges on people's kind of nostalgia for Indiana Jones and an audience that has aged, and an audience that, frankly, just doesn't go to the cinema as much anymore. And I don't think Indiana Jones is the sort of film that, the sort of 15 to 25-year-olds is really that keen on. But anyway.
But, Eatock, could you
see... Especially a generation that's grown up with MCU films as well, dare I say. Well, Indiana Jones about an old man. Ugh.
True. Yeah, yeah. It's definitely tapping into our generation, probably.
Of course,
definitely.
Which, yeah. So, Eatock, had you seen this before we did it?
No, I had not seen it. I knew it was coming out at the time. I had absolutely no interest in seeing this. After Crystal Skull. I was just like, why would I ever want to see another Indiana Jones movie?
Well, in this podcast as well, like, let's be honest, we've pretty much talked about every indie film at a point in time.
It's true, like, yeah. So
even because we obviously reviewed Temple of Doom. And I think both Last Crusade and Raiders got discussed a fair bit in our like top 80s movies.
Yeah.
And then Crystal Skull just gets mentioned every now and again as how not to do things. So we finally completed the full circle of this dial, I suppose, of destiny. What about you, Smith? Had you seen this?
Well, funnily enough, I went with a dear friend of mine to the cinema to see it.
Really?
Neil Brock.
You went with AD. Yeah.
And
me. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you two went to see it in the cinema?
So we went and
holding
saw this.
hands, like skipping along the road. Oh, that's delightful.
We went to see it, and I think it was mainly because I kind of said, right, I really want to... I actually did want to see it, mainly out of curiosity, but I also felt if I want to see it, I want to see it at the cinema, you know. So yeah, I persuaded Nige and AD to come with me, and I recorded a little post-cinema review of the three of us, which I'll play before we do this one, so we can see what we actually felt then, and then in that case,
when we get to the review, let me do mine first, because then I'm not influenced by your post-review or your other reviews, because I'm really, you don't know, like after watching this movie, I was like, I cannot wait to hear what the others think. This is like one of the ones I've been looking forward to most.
Well, it's interesting that you're now looking forward to talking about it so much, considering you were not looking forward to watching
I did not want to watch this movie. I was like, fuck this movie.
So I kind of recommended it again for us to watch. I felt like it was a good one to talk about. But first of all, before we get to the synopsis, first point is Steven Spielberg does not direct this film. He's obviously directed all four of the others, including Crystal Skull.
He did Crystal Skull.
So yeah, directed by James Mangold, who you might reckon. He's done loads of stuff. I didn't realise he's done so much. He did more recently Ford v Ferrari, Logan.
Oh, I love that film.
I haven't seen it actually, Ford v Ferrari.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's so Christian Bale and Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. Beautiful film, beautifully shot as well. As a spoiler review.
Oh, there you go. He did Logan, Wolverine, Night and Day, that Tom Cruise film I swear we've mentioned before.
Night and Day.
Walk the Line, Girl Interrupted, Copland. It goes on and on and on. He's done.
He did Copland.
He did Copland, yeah.
This is me, Nige.
Of all the films, Copland.
Say what?
I got me. I really.
He's got.
I enjoyed Copland.
I enjoyed Copland.
Is a very interesting.
But he's got a good CV and a very varied CV. It seems. But yeah, he also had a hand in writing it, along with David Koepp, who we've spoke about loads. Most recently, Jurassic Park. He wrote that, and also Jez and John Henry Butterworth, who had a big hand in writing it, who we last spoke about on Day After Tomorrow. So there's quite a lot of links to other films that we've reviewed.
Edge of Tomorrow.
I was going to say Day After Tomorrow.
Oh, Edge of
I don't remember doing that.
I was literally sitting there going, if you, Smith, go back and look at the video, I literally start doing this. Like I'm trying to solve the most complicated mathematical sum.
Day After Tomorrow with Keanu Reeves
it's not Keanu Reeves, it's the one with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh my God.
Dennis
What's
Quaid.
the one with Keanu Reeves then?
That's
I saw that at the cinema.
Oh, what is that called?
Because it's based on the old black and white movie.
Yeah.
Oh, what is that?
You know the one I mean.
Yeah.
Who cares?
The big alien comes and lands.
Yeah, the ridiculous fucking.
What's that called? I saw that at the cinema. I cannot remember a single thing about it.
The day the Earth stood still. So it's got nothing to do with tomorrow.
No,
it's just
there's a day in it. Okay, so anyway.
Oh my God.
There's three films. Okay, and it stars Harrison Ford returning as Indiana Jones, who's now 80. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Antonio Banderas, Toby Jones, Boyd Holbrook, Ethan Isidore, and Mads Mikkelsen. And then
Mads Mikkelsen
also an
Mads
billing
Mikkelsen
as well, like because it's very strange the order they've got the billing in. But
yeah,
he is definitely an and. So
yeah, and then also it is funny how they've got the billing. And then also we have John Rhys Davis and Karen Allen returning, which was no secret before the film came out.
Well, it kind of was. Like Karen Allen, people only realised she was in it when she was at the premiere.
Oh, really?
Like,
okay.
Oh, Karen Allen. So.
Oh, okay. So that was a big secret until it came out.
Smith let it slip.
But
Smith,
I think as soon as she was at the premiere, obviously it was all you know that.
You guys went to the premiere together, didn't you?
We did.
You went to the premiere. Like Nige wore a lovely red dress as always.
I was going to go with Shia LaBeouf, but I had to take Smith instead.
Shia LaBeouf.
Who I stood next to, or just behind, in front of in a McDonald's. I think I told you that story.
Next to, behind, in front of.
No,
which was it?
I don't believe any of this. It was a completely different person who stood on top of them.
it was Shia LaBeouf, and it was like really random. I feel like I've told this story on the podcast before.
I've never heard this story.
I don't think I have.
Yeah,
did you speak
Los
to him?
Angeles.
It's moonlighting.
No, we we kind of give a little, I know who you are, you don't know who I am. The other way around there is Shy was like, I know who you are.
Yeah.
And he was like, who am I?
Who the fuck are you?
So what's this film about, Nige?
Oh, here we go.
Shia LaBeouf. The story.
Here we go.
Will this contain spoilers? Should we tell our...
Sure.
It won't contain spoilers.
Well, it kind of does.
Oh, okay.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, this synopsis contains spoilers.
1944, that good old time, back in the day, and we find ourselves with a CGI'd Indiana Jones who has been captured by the Nazis, along with his friend, Oxford archaeologist Basil Shaw, played by British institution Toby Jones, known for The Detectorists and lots of other lovely things. And essentially, they end up on a Nazi train and end up getting Archimedes' dial, which has been stolen by a very naughty Nazi played by Mads Mikkelsen called Jürgen Voller. After a bunch of hijinks, including more CGI-based nonsense, eventually they get the dial, escape with their lives, and the Nazis get rounded up by the Brits. 25 years later, we're in the swinging 60s, and Indy is a grumpy old man, realistically. He's retiring from his job at Hunter College. He's grumpy, he's drunk, he's lacking in spunk, and his happy ever after with Marion at the end of Crystal Skull is seemingly in tatters. So she's left him in a small one-bedroom apartment in New York and has filed for separation after their son, the forgettable Shia LaBeouf from the Crystal Skull, Mutt, has sadly died after being killed in the Vietnam War. However, despite all of this, unbeknown to Indy, Basil Shaw's daughter, Helena Shaw, otherwise known as Wombat, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, his goddaughter, manipulates him to in fact retrieve the long-forgotten dial and takes him on a magical mystery tour across Morocco, Greece, the Aegean Sea, Italy, and eventually the past. Now, does this film prove that time has caught up with Indy at last? Or does it in fact show that Indy has finally caught up with time?
Oh, wow.
Let's find out.
I'm retiring.
Well, in that case, what are we drinking?
Same for the goddaughter.
Dad told me you found something on a train during the war. A dial that could change the course of history.
Why are you chasing the thing that drove your father crazy?
Also, I feel like that synopsis contained smidgens of an opinion, but we'll see.
Well, it did feel a little bit sarcastic, but
yeah, that's what I mean. But
we'll see. We'll see what past Nige thinks and present Nige later on.
Yeah. Let's be honest. Do a synopsis about any Indiana Jones film, and it sounds bizarre.
It's true. I think
yeah.
a good starting point here. So obviously, you mentioned we start the film. We're back in 1944, and Indiana Jones has been de-aged. I guess a good opinion.
I just hate it as a concept, full stop.
Okay, that's my question.
Mixed results in this. Mixed results.
But
what did you?
I'll be honest with you. When I watched it at the cinema, it was a little bit weird, but it was fine. It was like, you know what? I actually really got into that opening scene. I really enjoyed it. When I watched it again on like a classic kind of widescreen TV, it was like, yeah, it's not quite as good, is it? It's not quite as good, and I just don't like it. I can't remember ever watching a film and thinking this is good because they've de-aged someone.
The only time I've ever seen it done convincingly and where I thought it served a purpose because it was brief and done was in one of the Marvel movies, and it was
Robert Downey Jr. And the film opens with him, and it's a young version of him. I remember sitting in the cinema. I think it was one of the first examples of de-aging done on a big screen. And you heard this gasp from the audience because there was like a young Robert Downey Jr. No, that's because you had your cock out again, Eton.
Nice. you know too much, you saucy devil. It's only because you're wearing the red dress. So anyway, and then in that scene, Robert Downey Jr. The real one walks into shot, and I was like, that's really great de-aging. But it was also a nice, subtle, brief, quick use of de-aging. It's like, here's what we can do, but we're only going to do it for like 3 seconds because it costs a fortune. In this, like the first reveal is really, I mean, it's a really great reveal where it's Indy Jones. When they take off the thing, you're like, oh, it's Indy Jones. But I mean, that when they take off the hood, his eye does a weird thing. It's
it's
a deep
reflective
fake eye.
Yeah, it reflects the light when he's kind of being interrogated. It just looks really weird.
You were alone?
But the biggest problem I've found with de-aged Indy is that you've got de-aged Indy, but it's old voice.
Yeah,
it's his old voice. So it's really weird that they didn't pick that up or
I
made
didn't
the
notice that.
It's
did,
really
yeah.
weird. Like, especially initially, not so much when he's shouting like at Basil and stuff, but initially when he's being interrogated and he's like doing the Indy voice, it's the old man Harrison Ford voice or the old man Indy voice, where it's much. And so it doesn't quite work. It works in the rest of the movie because that voice is his, but I'm surprised. It must have been a conscious decision because there's no way they would have missed that in editing or even filming it.
Well, they didn't really have any choice either, did they?
No, of course.
They probably could have manipulated it because with the de-aging, what they've done is taken like elements from the old films and literally
not just the old films, his entire back catalogue they had access to. So
and placed
and
his
even scenes
face
that
on.
weren't in films that they kind of found on the cutting room floor. They used that apparently.
Oh wow, okay, I didn't know that. But I will say about this opening. I was going to say about the opening 20, like it's 21 minutes.
Is it that long? Wow.
Yeah, 21 minutes. The train scene. It really did feel like a good old-fashioned kind of throwback to Indy, like
definitely
silly moments, like the bit in the noose, which is ridiculous, where the bomb lands in the middle of the.
Yeah, it's like. We talked about it a lot in these sort of podcasts about Indy. It's like your boy's own stories, the old comic books. It's ridiculous, but I think that bit maybe goes a little bit too far. But that first 20 minutes, I really enjoyed. Like, even with the CGI stuff, I'm like, oh, it still feels like. Wow,
there was some really creative action choices, like the bit where there's the gunners firing at the British planes flying over, and then a bomb drops on them. They die, and then the gun turret just fires back. But because the train is on a curve, it's the gun turret
the rest of the carriages,
killing all the Nazis that are chasing after Indy. So I was like, that's a really creative use of a geographical sense of we've got this train on a curve.
I'm really with you on that. Like when I first saw it at the cinema, but even for me, like watching it again, the opening of this film, I absolutely loved it. I felt like I was back in Indiana Jones the de-aging thing. So I didn't mind it. Like I thought it's done really well. I think the issue I have with it is I can't focus on just watching the film because I'm looking out for it. And I had the same thing with The Irishman. Like, you know, that's in it for a lot longer. Yeah. Like, and basically what I'm doing is looking at, you know, Joe Pesci's face and just trying to work out, you know, like just looking at it. And, you know, it's like in one of those films, a bit like Birdman, brilliant film, but I was looking for the cut, and you know, it's like that kind of thing. And
it just detracts from it. There's no other way of putting it. Like, no matter how good that scene is, it's detracted by the fact they've used CGI.
Because it's like a human,
even if it's
human nature kind of thing. It's like you know what you're not supposed to be looking at. It's like, don't look at that. There's like a car accident or something. It's like human nature goes, well, I'll just have a little quick peek. So it's like when you're seeing this on screen, you know you're going to see a de-aged Indy. So the moment you see him, every time he's on screen, you're almost fixated on him. You're hearing the dialogue, you're aware of the surroundings and everything. But every time you're just... maybe even the human brain is even looking for faults as well. As well, clearly it is. Because, I said... When that bag first comes off his head and his eye does that weird thing, I was just like, oh, that looks weird. And then it got okay-ish throughout the film when they did the de-aging.
And there's little bits of like calling back, you know, the bit where he drives the Nazis in that scene. You know, it's like it's very similar to in is it Last Crusade where he gets the Hitler to sign the book? It's like there's little callbacks
and the bit
all
where
throughout.
He gets the food and sits down as well, like in the sort of food cart or whatever you call it. So.
But Toby Jones is also in this opening bit, and I think it's a shame he's not in the rest of the film in some ways, because I thought he's brilliant in this opening like 20 minutes, because he's comic like we get from other characters in the old Indy films, but he's not overdone like Ray Winston overdone. And obviously Phoebe,
don't bring Ray Winston into Indy.
Well, you know, that's what they tried to go for in Crystal Skull, and it obviously that was probably probably my biggest criticism of the film is Ray Winston, one of.
Like, I would say he's the Marcus Brody, isn't he? He's the closest thing we've got to that kind of classic Indy character. I know that Salah comes into it and has a nice little sort of almost cameo, but it kind of takes you back to that kind of, he's a loyal friend, he's someone he's a traditional archaeologist, he's an academic, he's not someone who finds himself in these kind of scrapes, and it's always sort of interesting seeing that kind of, we've talked about fish out of water a lot, but someone being put in that situation. He has quite a crucial crucial part of this like opening story that he kind of shoots the bad guy, and it's, for him, you can see how much of a toll it takes on him, where for Indy it's like he's kind of this person that's sort of killed many people on his kind of quest for adventures. It's a really nicely done scene, and surprisingly so, because I imagine a lot of people went into this thinking this is going to be a nightmare, like a fifth Indy after such a bad fourth one.
Well, because I think the problem with the problem with Crystal Skull is that I remember very little of that film, but the action scenes didn't feel like Indy scenes. They felt like it didn't feel right. There was something about the action scenes in that film. I feel that, at least with this opening scene, this feels like a true return to, this is what Indiana Jones 4 should have been, if you know what I mean. Yeah, it's like, I would love Indiana Jones 4 to have almost been this 21-minute little short film. So there you go, there's Indiana Jones 4, because it's like, it just ticks all the boxes that you want. Yeah, we've got CGI Indy, which we've kind of gone over, but like I say, in terms of staging, in terms of the mood, the humor, like the action, the kind of comedy, but not overtly hilarious or anything like that. But there's one bit when he's fighting, I think Mads Mikkelsen on top of the train, Indy this is, and they're fighting, and Mads Mikkelsen drops the gun, and Toby picks it up, and he's like, get the gun, and Toby picks it up, and then he's like, shoot him. And it's that feels like a very Indiana Jones thing, like something he would say to, like, one of the characters who's fumbling with a pistol or something. I really enjoyed those opening 21 minutes. I thought it was really well. So I love that final shot as well, where they both get out the river.
This kind of silhouette, big, wide.
They're walking. You get that big one, and you see the British flag, I think it is, on top of the train, where it's almost like we've landed on the train. There's all this kind of. You see it's like, we've got a conclusion to this. I was really...
I mean, going into this film as well, I wasn't sure how they were going to use this thing. What I did like is that they set it up with this, and then that was the only time they use it. They don't like flashback, because otherwise it becomes...
There is that one other scene.
There's one scene
about the dial wombat when she's younger and all that kind of stuff. But yeah,
like generally speaking, they don't like flashback all the time, because I reckon it could have got messy and distracting.
Also, they do it in dark, if you know what I mean. If this had been a daylight fight, very problematic. So they're very, I mean, a lot of when they use these techniques, whether it be CGI or CGI de-aging, there's always a conscious choice of, when do we show these scenes? Well, if we do it at night, we can mask a lot of the stuff with shadows, a lot of the imperfections. So it makes sense. Plus, I think, like I said, this opening scene, it does kind of work set at night, because the fury of the explosions and the gunfire and everything, it creates all these like iridescent glows and stuff. It just looks like a really cinema. I would love to have seen that in the cinema, that opening 21 minutes.
In the cinema it was an absolute blast. And I actually, like, kind of, I guess moving on slightly here, I actually really love the transition into the 60s. So I love the fact he's old, and they don't shy away from making him look old. He's got
woken up with
straight away. No offense to Harrison Ford, like,
no,
he's 80,
old man body,
a bit old man body, and the fact, like, all the kids are listening to the Beatles, and he's like,
woken up to the Beatles, which was
he's putting booze in his coffee. He's now not this kind of superhero like that we've just seen a flashback to.
That's the beautiful contrast of it. You show him kind of in his prime, as it were, like fighting Nazis, saving the world, and now you see him banging on the door of these kids who've got no idea who he is. It's like, shut up, old man, go back up to you. And it's like, this guy saved the day. He's seen spirits, he's seen stuff that would, shit that'll turn you white, to quote Winston Zeddemore. But it's that thing that it's such a lovely, like you say, Smith, juxtaposition between, this superhero to like this old man, and like you say, him getting up from his chair, like being woken up, and he's living in a small apartment.
It's really sad. It's really sad. And like I said about the bit when he's teaching, I mentioned, like, obviously when he's young and all the girls fancy him, and now he's just some boring old fart. And there's even the scene when he kind of starts to go on his adventure, like a CIA agent's there, and she gets the file of Indiana Jones, and you think, finally they're going to be like, wow, this guy's a legend. But they don't even mention it. It's just like, no, he's just a random guy who's, he's some teacher or whatever. Like, he's never kind of built up to be that thing.
But I would argue, hasn't that always been in Indiana Jones' like MO? He's not someone that's chasing the glory or anything like that. He's always been, the guy that's this love of archaeology and stuff like that, this superhero, as it were, without being like Indiana Jones saves, tribe from, witch doctor or anything like that, or Indiana Jones foils the Nazis. There's none of that. He's always been this guy that is probably known by certain people in power, but primarily he's always been this guy on his own adventures, as going back to those
most of his friends are past or irrelevant. Like that's the reality of, like, you live to 80.
So that's what I think is really good about this opening scene, to see him, because the alternative of that is, what do people want to see him as? Oh, he's a broken down old man, this is such a shame. It's like, what do you want to see him as? Like this ace wealthy guy that all the women are still falling for? It's like, I'm sorry, that's not reality. This is a guy who had a passion for archaeology and kind of knew it was never going to pay off, but he did this for which Phoebe Waller-Bridge talks about later in the movie. He did it for the thrill of it quite a bit.
Belongs in a museum. Belongs in a never museum. The financial rewards. It was about doing the right thing.
About doing the right thing. And so his character was almost destined to kind of nice. Be in this. No, thank you. It was almost destined to be in this position of being, obviously not lonely. So the loss of his son and Marion leaving him is kind of
tragic.
What has put him in this position. Yeah, but it's also again a lovely acknowledgement of reality. That his son died, in the war, and it's just like, oh man. I mean, there's a beautiful line later in the film, but we'll get to that. But the funny thing is, in my notes, I actually wrote down his current life, as we like to say, fish out of water, because it is. Him on the train and everything.
Well, and also you said about the lighting being so dark and kind of wet and indie-ish in that opening scene. In the 60s, we're lit, like, in contrast to his character, it's warm and fluffy. It's all really like, and obviously we've got the swinging 60s happening around him, so he's so out of place in this world, whereas obviously what we saw him as, that's kind of where his place was. But yeah, so we meet obviously Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who is Toby Jones's daughter, which is Indy's goddaughter. And yeah, what did you guys think of Phoebe Waller-Bridge in this film? I kind of got mixed opinions, I would say.
So it's interesting. So I know her from Fleabag.
Yeah.
So I'd never, again, that's one of those shows that just didn't really appeal to me. And then one drunken night, my friend Marianne was like, we should watch Fleabag. Really, and I was like, and we watched series 1 one weekend and series 2 another weekend. And I was like, oh, this is such a great show. Like, I loved Fleabag, and her performance was so charming in it, and I just found it to be a great show. When she was announced for this, I was like, interesting, but I can see why. I can see she can carry that kind of charm and that Britishness that you kind of want from that character, I think. So yeah, she first pops up in the movie and is, in the class, and it's obvious that, she's very intellectual and knows her stuff, and then soon has a drink with Indy, and it's like, oh, and then she kind of reveals who she is. I thought her presence was very warranted in this film. That's the best way I'll put it. I thought her character, there were flaws, but I thought the character for the most part was well-rounded enough, and I feel like I'm going to get into a review.
Well, I'll jump in and say I thought she was great. I do. I think there's a lot of people, probably some of the people in like the negative reviews you've seen, that don't like strong women in films, but yeah, I think she really adds to it. I think her character obviously has ulterior motives in terms of she's all about the money. She's kind of seen what her dad went through. She's kind of seen where Indy is now, and she doesn't want that part of life. And I think if there are problems with this film, they don't stem from either her casting, her dialogue, or her involvement in this at all. And I think
not at all.
Like, you could quite easily see, and they've kind of said they're not doing this, but you could easily see a kind of spin-off where she kind of takes on the mantle, and I don't think that necessarily would be unwarranted based on what we see in this. So.
But I'm going to jump in very quickly and then jump back out.
By all means.
One of the things I kept seeing online was, oh my God, in Indy 5 they tease that she's going to be the next. They do not fucking do that at all. Not in the slightest fucking way. And I'm so infuriated watching this movie. I was angry after this movie. Again, not jumping forward into my review, but I was like, that's such a crock of shit that was spun by these hate mongers online who were just saying, oh yeah, it's clearly a vehicle for it. It's not. It's so not a vehicle for her. I'm jumping forward in my review, but I was so angry at being lied to so heavily with people with an agenda who are accusing this film of having an agenda. It's like, fuck you and your own personal agenda of hate.
But it was the same. Sorry.
No, go on, Nige.
No. It was the same with Mutt. It was the same in The Crystal Skull, that everyone assumed that Shia LaBeouf would be the new Indy and we'd go from there. And he got hammered for it, like both his performance and the film itself, and that was part of the reason why he was written out of this.
I mean, they
so badly received.
They did hint at it in that with the hat picking up at the end of
exactly. Yeah,
Crystal
there was more
Skull.
hints in that.
But in this, like, obviously the end shot of the film is Indy taking his hat back.
Is Indy taking his fucking hat?
But then she wears a hat when she crosses the
road.
Yeah, it's a type of hat.
I think
she also has feet, and Indiana Jones.
I noticed she had hands as well.
But I think she's a great actor, and I think generally speaking, she's really good in this film. There were a couple of times where I found she was a little bit annoying. There was one moment where she, like, the facial expression is probably a little bit too much, or she says Jonesy and he went Jonesy, and I was like, it's probably more that I was getting more of Ray Winston flashbacks, that I was like, don't go down there.
You don't need that.
But overall, like, she did a really good job, and like, the fact that in this film she is as integral to the role as Indiana Jones, as in, like,
but I want to stress to the hate mongers, she's not integral to the point in taking away anything from Indiana Jones. That's the frustrating thing.
But she's not a love interest, and that's all they've traditionally had. Like, even like Marion, who was a super strong character sort of comparatively in Raiders, there's still that love, and obviously there can't be with his goddaughter. And again, it's like, is she seen as an equal? Is she too mannish? Is she too tall to be seen as like that kind of character? It's just.
But the thing is, she's as fallible as Indy. In this film, what I like about her is that, like I said, I went in expecting super strong woman, like, as we've seen in numerous films, and it is becoming somewhat of a trope. And it's not that, I take umbrage with strong female characters in film. God knows. Aliens, Sigourney Weaver, numerous films over the decades. We've seen so many. Linda Hamilton, bloody hell, yeah. But I was expecting her to dominate this movie. Right. But throughout the film, she's as fallible as Indy. She has all the same flaws that Indy does in that way of, being cocksure and then, I've messed up. I was expecting her to save the day every few seconds. Indy saves her, she saves him. I'm not saying it's an equal playing field, but I'm saying this wasn't a vehicle for her to become the female Indiana Jones.
Stop! Sorry.
Helena!
Dr. Jones, get him.
So a lot of this film is them swapping, trying to find the other part of the Dial of Destiny. There's the before we get to the tut-tut bit, there's the horse galloping down. There's the Peace March, which is obviously a massive kind of contradiction of what's actually happening.
Filmed in Glasgow as well, that scene, bizarrely.
The Peace March?
Yeah, filmed in Glasgow, Scotland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is just mad. But anyway.
Is it... Sorry, I don't think... Isn't it a sorry? There is the Peace March.
It's the moon. No, there's the moon mask, but there's also a protest going on at the same time.
Yeah, because you've got
into the protest first.
You've got Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and the other guy who everybody forgets, who were on parade, and Indy like rides past them
on a horse, like, and then goes
like,
down.
Here's the astronauts.
And then it gets absolutely ridiculous as he gallops down a tube station through there. But yeah, like but the set piece that really sticks with me, I guess, just generally talking about set pieces, this tuk-tuk bit where they're swapping this dial over and over again. Like, it is really well done in the fact that it doesn't feel like blue screen. You know what I mean? It feels like we're on location and we're having a proper old-fashioned action scene, which I liked.
There's only one time it felt a bit greeny screen, blue screen, whatever your colour preference is, where Indy Jones and her were next to one another on their when they were on separate ones and they were conversing with one another. That's the only time it felt really bluey, greeny, screeny. But the rest was a lot of practical of like driving. It felt, you saw these.
Yeah, it felt like old school in that sense, and I'm sure they would have, generally speaking, gone for that because these films that we've grown up on were all about, not necessarily
the practical effects.
Yeah, exactly. Like Temple of Doom, it was a big truck flying through the thing. It wasn't like CG like it would be now, but it'd be really easy for them to do it CG now.
Of course.
Yeah, definitely. And like Indy, in fairness, like Harrison Ford, apparently he was doing like 40-mile bike rides and daily walks just to get back into shape to kind of do some more of the physical side of this. Because again, it could have just easily been stuntman with his face kind of like superimposed on it and away you go. But I feel like he did this properly and put the effort in. I just feel like one of the problems with this film is the disjointed nature of some of those set pieces. Again, like the kind of Indy got away with it in the old days and very much does with like, you could just put a map up and you're going from location to location and you're embracing it. I feel like with this, it's like it's like how quite a lot of the Bond films in recent times have struggled with is it feels like they're doing locations almost for the sake of it, whilst in Indy there has been a lot of like nation sort of hopping and going
they often do
one place to another, which is fine, but it just doesn't work quite as well I think with this. And I think the most sort of telling example is like Antonio Banderas' slightly bizarre cameo of like being in it for a few minutes and being like third build, and that whole scene is just like
the diving eel scene. They're obviously it's a very simple story. They're looking for the other half of the Dial of Destiny before the baddies do, and Wombat is like. It's like at first you're like, is she double crossing him? Is she not?
Yeah, there is a lot. Well, I mean,
but she steals it to try and sell it.
But then they kind of
and then they end up there.
Then they kind of pair up quite quickly on that boat scene. I think is where they almost like go, right, we need to get out of this. But yeah, I know what you mean. That boat scene does feel odd. The eels, like obviously snakes before, like with Indy, like so we have this different kind of thing.
It's underwater snakes.
Yeah, Antonio Banderas, I think I said, like when we saw it at the cinema, I didn't even recognise him because I didn't know he was in it, and I was just like,
it took me a few seconds.
It didn't need to be him, but anyway.
No, when you hear that voice though,
I
was like, oh, it's Banderas. Yeah.
But I think one of the things with this film that is, I think, quite unlike the others, albeit I can't remember Crystal Skull that well, is how much collateral damage there is to like characters and good guys, I guess. Like at the start when the two people in the school get like randomly shot by the bad guys.
It's brutal,
and then
actually.
again, it's really brutal. And then like Banderas and his like teammate get killed, and like Harrison Ford's like, oh, one of my best friends has just died. And there's quite a lot of that, which is very unlike indie films. It's really jarring, and I just found it really. And even towards the end of the film, when they kind of get into an airport or just like steal a plane or whatever, they just randomly shoot a guy, and there's a lot of that where I was just like, okay, that isn't quite like Boyzone.
The bit when they go in the caves, you see the guy go, we're closed, and the Nazis are like, and then we don't see what happens to him, but later when they come out the caves, Indy and Phoebe, we'll call them, when they come out the caves, they're like, they see he's just slumped over, but it's not even like acknowledged. You just see his dead body there, and it's like, oh, they killed the tour guide.
The nice guy. It's just like, it's really kind of like a bit over the top almost. And even like the CIA agent, they sort of take her out and
I was surprised she was taken out. I thought she was going to be a prominent
character. It felt like she was going to be,
But we've not really spoken about Mads Mikkelsen and his like gang of Nazis, essentially.
Yeah, modern day.
What's his name? Cole
60s.
Holbrook, who's best known probably from Narcos. I think he was in a series of that, and he's quite good in it. I think he's quite brutal. And there's like the big.
Is he the second in command?
Yeah, the guy with the tash.
The blonde guy with the tash.
Oh, he was like I loved how kind of
he's got that look about him, hasn't he? Yeah,
they're just really nasty. Yeah, and it works really well, and they're kind of like a good team. And you've kind of got
the big dude.
The rip off of bloody
ridiculous.
What's his face, the wrestler who everyone loves these days. Guardians of the Galaxy guy.
Oh, Dave Bautista.
Yeah, but yeah, and I think Mads Mikkelsen is good. Although his backstory of I'm a professor from Alabama. It's no, you're pretty obviously a German and a Nazi.
Yeah,
and I know that
Schmidt,
obviously a lot of the Germans came over to America after the war and obviously worked on their sort of aero sort of plans. Aero scientists. I can't even talk. You get the idea. They did good work for
some of those storytelling points are clunky, I think, aren't they?
Definitely.
The way they've kind of explained some of that or tried to fill it in is sometimes just a little bit messy in that sense. And then obviously you've got the kid as well, who is basically like Shorty.
Like monobrow kid.
Who's meant to be like Short Round, who he's a good character in the film, but it just feels like Temple of Doom.
I remember seeing some reviews saying I can't believe that he knows how to pilot a plane after just... and it's I get that. I understand that kind of... that's a real suspension
I think you have
of disbelief.
To buy into that kind of thing in any indie film, though.
Well, you have to buy into that character. Yeah. That character is clearly a kid whose brain is kind of working in a different way, that he's able to learn all these things. So I love that they're in that big kind of bar thing in Tangiers, and you see him talking to the pilots, which he's clearly done numerous times. He's got this faux setup of what an aircraft control station looks like, and he's going, so when I do this, and the pilot's like, yeah, you do that, and they do this, and it's I do like that you kind of get that foreshadowing later when he flies the plane, which I knew he was going to do anyway. But I mean, that was the only time in the film I thought that Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character was really unlikable, and I was like, this is where they're going, where they're in Tangiers and she's doing the auction, and he turns up and she's so kind of dismissive of it. It's almost like that scene's written by a different... I can understand those that hate this movie jumping onto that scene and going, look at how they're treating Indy, and in that scene Indy is really kind of dismissed as this, who is this stupid old man turning up and blah blah blah. Also, it's got one of my least favourite scenes I remember seeing in the trailer, which is so stupid, where he cracks his whip and everybody pulls out a gun. Yeah. And he ducks, and then they all start shooting. It's like, who are you shooting at? If you look at that scene,
and then it's ducks. We won't go around the table and just shoot him.
Which is a big nostalgia kick to the Raiders.
The swords, yeah.
Do you fancy sending us a film to review, or letting us know your thoughts on a film that we have discussed? All of your comments will be read out in our end of season leaderboard episode. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com, tweet us at offradarpodcast, message us on Facebook. All links and info in the description down below.
Do it! Do it!
One of the biggest problems with this film is it just tries to steal snippets of all the other indie films and kind of put them in. So you mentioned, you had Short Round who drove the car. You've got this kid who flies the plane. You've got the scene with the snakes, and obviously you've got the scene with the eels. You've got the scene in Last Crusade where he has to pass all the tests. They kind of have a very similar thing when they're trying to go to find the burial site, where they have to pass all these trials of figuring things out, and it's fine to acknowledge that, and it's fine to have that as part of an indie film because it's kind of canon, but at the same time it's just a bit they're just doing everything not quite as well. And it's almost like going back to the most recent kind of Star Wars films, the true sequels, where the first one was just basically, let's do A New Hope exactly the same and just dress it up slightly differently. And I think you really have to be someone who's kind of committed to indie, that's willing to overlook that stuff and be along for the ride. And I think that's why this film really struggled with the newer audience that didn't necessarily have that connection with indie, because I think for an audience like us, we will give it enough leeway to be yeah, it's fine, I can see what they're doing, it's indie. But for a lot of people, it's just what is this? It doesn't really work necessarily.
And I guess the biggest the biggest point in this film where I was when we get to this point where we get this time travel bit, I was shocked at first. I was like, whoa, they're actually doing this. They're actually sending Indy back in time. first impressions of that when that happened for you guys?
Oh, I was fine with it. We've seen Indiana Jones see the spirits of people that melt faces.
Yeah.
We've seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and I'm not going to acknowledge Crystal Skull, but that took it to a next level of kind of ethereal aliens. So with this time travel thing, I was like, in the world of fantasy and science fiction, which Indiana Jones falls into, and the way you present time travel, Back to the Future, for example, it's how you present it. If you present it convincingly enough, I think as an audience member, you can go in and go, okay, I'm buying into this. The whole thing with the Archimedes dial and stuff, like the Dial of Destiny, predicting time fissures, I was like, yeah, I'm on board with this.
It's not that ridiculous, is it?
Because the Greeks were especially Archimedes, were famed for that. The veritable computers, phones we're acknowledging right now, the Zoom call we're having, everything is done in computer code. Those computers are all built through mathematics, which finds its very origins in Greek, in the Greeks. And it's so for that to be the MacGuffin, the premise for how we get this time travel thing, I'm like, yeah, I can buy into that. I think time travel will never happen, because my attitude is, if it does happen, it would have already happened. If you know what I mean.
Let's not go down this rabbit hole, Christ. But I just want to say on this, I don't feel it's as extreme or as far as obviously Crystal Skull. But it's further than a lot of the others, and I think it just ever so slightly falls the right side. But yeah, I definitely had a bit of a when I first saw it, and I would say just quickly, in the original script, they did actually go back, like the plan succeeded, and they go back to Nazi Germany.
Wow.
And basically Indy has to stop them killing Hitler, which is obviously goes completely against it. So that sounds quite interesting. But
you've just made a better movie.
Like I said, that was like the original script, and for whatever reason they chose to go the route they went down. So yeah, I think that might have been more interesting, but again, would that have been even less?
It might have got into that series, where the Germans won the war. What was that called?
Man in the High Castle.
Man in the High Castle. Yeah. I think you're right, Itok. It's not necessarily the concept, but it's how it was presented. And for me, how it was presented felt not right when they actually get there, because it felt like Bill and Ted in the fact that they're like all dressed up, and you know what I mean? I just I couldn't take it seriously. There's like people with funny accents in like bathrobes.
Smith, you shouldn't ever go on holiday abroad. You'll be like,
never go to Greece, Smith.
No, but it sounded like,
what's he talking about?
Almost like,
what's all that palaver?
No, what are they talking about?
No,
you know
what I mean is
Smith wanted him to go back to Roman times and see a bunch of
it wasn't Tenerife, all right? No. A bunch of Romans,
like sexy beasts. That'd be so good.
But it felt like to me like there was like a load of blokes in bathrobes, and I.
Smith, this is.
But
that's actual history that you.
I know, but that Bill, Bill and Ted comparison where
you're thinking of Socrates.
Exactly, it feels.
Socrates.
It doesn't feel serious enough, and I don't know what it was. It just felt like I just couldn't take it seriously.
I do get it.
However, I
totally
love the way they kind of ended that section where she punches him, and we're just straight back. We don't get another time travel sequence, and it was a really clever way to just get him back to the future, or back to the future. Jesus, get him back to the present, and
it just feels really weird. Like the plane that follows him, and there's like the pilot who wakes up, who's like, "Yeah, I'm just along for the ride now. Let's land. Let's land.
Yeah, he just took it all in his stride. But I did love the moment when they actually do meet Archimedes, and he's like, because one of the moments when I was watching the film, I was just like, I caught myself smiling. Watching it was when they're at Archimedes' tomb, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character looks at the what would you call it?
Engravings, essentially.
Yeah, the engravings. Yeah. And she goes, "Oh, it's a phoenix," and he's like, "Yeah, phoenix. Yeah, it's a common thing from it." And she goes, "No, the phoenix has propellers."
Yeah, it's very.
And he's like, "What?" And then they look at his skeleton. He's got the watch, and it's like, oh my god! Either he's time traveled or someone time travels using his device.
I think it makes you assume that he has time traveled.
The twist
is obviously what happens.
They're the ones that, and like I think they say to Archimedes, I think Indiana Jones, he has this beautiful speech, and he's like, "It's an honor meeting you," or "I never expected to meet the great man." And Archimedes says, "You were," I think he says like, "You were always going to," or something. And I was like, "Oh, I really like that."
I love the fact that he sees his dream. It's almost like he kind of because it is like it's almost like better than anything he's ever found, isn't it? Like that is his museum. It is. It's a really sweet moment because you can see in Harrison Ford's eyes, he's almost welling up at that moment, and then to the point where he's like, "I want to stay," and then you're like, "He can't stay. Indiana Jones can't stay." That whole space-time continuum would explode.
Yeah. No, there are numerous moments in this film that there's a lot. I was surprised at the amount of heart in it, like the appearance of Sulla, and I was just like, oh, here we go. Is Sulla going to be along for the ride? Yeah. And he's just like, I miss our adventures, and I was like, oh, this is so perfect. It's a brief scene at the airport, but it's very touching. It's very heartfelt. It's not like, remember when I said this in that movie or anything like that. It just feels very natural, almost like a very natural conclusion to their adventures. It's like, look, we can't do this anymore. I shouldn't be doing this. You definitely shouldn't be doing this because you've got a family and stuff. So I'm going to head off. You stay here. And then there was another really powerful scene when they're on the boat.
When he's talking about his son.
That's really when good. She says like, if you could travel back in time, and he says like, I would stop my son from enlisting, and she was like, how would you? And he's, for people saying, oh, he phoned it in this film, and blah, it's just a load of fucking
no way, I disagree
narrative
with that.
Garbage. He does this beautiful like speech where she says like, how would you stop your son from enlisting? And she's like, you can hear him breaking in his voice. He's like, I'd tell him he was going to die, and it's just like, oh, without having to. I mean, yes, we understand at the moment that his son died, but it wasn't built up. It's just almost like a throwaway line, but it's so perfectly delivered.
Like another poignant bit is obviously Marion at the end, and like I well done. Like,
I did.
Well done. I love the fact, they do the same kisses, obviously from the original film, and just. Yeah, everyone kind of leaves the room and leaves them to it, and I just think those two being in the room together, it's so powerful.
It's really underplayed. There's no music.
Yes.
It's the most understated film scene in the whole almost franchise.
Agreed. And it's respectful. Like they have a kiss, and the camera is like really backed away, and there may be that aspect of like, oh, nobody wants to watch two oldies have a kiss, but it almost seems like no, just kind of almost give them their privacy.
Yeah.
Kind of. I just think the whole scene was really well done. But it's also kind of like the very end of the film is a bit like, oh, okay, it's like, how else can you finish it, I suppose?
Yeah, and that's why it's really nice that you end on the smile of him. He put the hat out the window. You're zooming in on the hat, and then he takes the hat, and that's the almost like the payoff. Otherwise, and
because I think get ice cream.
Well, I think there's the way you end that shot. Is you either do the zoom like the zoom onto the hat, what they call it, the iris. double iris, Smith. So they do the iris onto the hat, and I think it would have been utterly perfect if it just fades to black then, or just zooms out. Grabbing the hat, it's just one of those things. It's like, look, adventuring is in this guy's blood. Like he's going to do his best. I hope, and I don't think they'll ever make another one.
Well, not with him, they won't anyway.
No, he's not. So.
And him grabbing the hat is just like,
that's me.
Yeah, I'm always going to
exactly. I'm always going to be Indiana Jones, and he always is.
And again, it's that kind of stylistic choice of like those old kind of adventure films where you would have that kind of like zoom in or fade out or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, and it's like it's just appropriate, and it's a nice way to wrap it up.
Trivia, Nige. You must have some. One thing we haven't spoke about, which we should just quickly, and I know it will probably come up in your trivia. The music. John Williams has come back for music. He came out of retirement, and it's as good as ever, I think.
Yeah, nominated for an Oscar. So been nominated for Best Original Score, and it's classic John Williams.
It is,
which you can't go wrong with.
The baddies have a theme tune like Indiana Jones. It's like there's still all the trademarks of the originals, but it's brilliant. What him and his team to kind of score that as well as they have done. Some 40 years later is a truly remarkable feat.
Yeah, and again, if it's his last one, then he's gone out on a high. So credit to him. But bit of trivia. Let's talk about Salah. So Mo Salah. No, Salah he's the odd man out you might say, because for some reason he's in the first, the third, and the fifth Indy films. So he's like, I'm not doing even numbers. But he was actually offered the chance to come back in Crystal Skull, like a cameo at the wedding, and he actually turned it down. And he said he thought the character of Salah is worth more to the audience than that. And I think he does get his payoff. The fact he comes in, saves Indy with a punch when the guy's like screaming about the murder and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just, I think it's really worth having him in. And it's good, really. So there you go. But also going back to kind of like the originals, when George Lucas and Spielberg first signed the contract with Paramount Pictures to make Indiana Jones, they actually signed on for 5 films. So it's kind of appropriate. It took them a long time. So from 1979 to now that they've done it. So... And you mentioned, Smith, the fact this is the only one not to have been directed by Spielberg. And I think when it was first like really being discussed in about 2020, he was still attached to direct, but he actually made the decision to step away from the film as well and let someone else take it on, which is like a little bit surprising. But again, like they kind of did a big screening and with all like the execs, but also like Lucas and Spielberg and everyone else. And at the end of that, Spielberg was like, wow, someone else can like making Indiana Jones films, and they were all obviously happy with it. So
that's good that
really
he's
nice.
not that precious about his baby that he felt like that. Either that or he just didn't like the script. But
come on, mate, have you seen like Jaws? Which
Revenge,
one? Jaws 3, Jaws 4? Yeah, Michael Caine phoning it in.
Like
Christ, I don't think he's that fussed. But we mentioned as well Harrison Ford's age, the fact he was 80 for this film.
It's amazing.
It's actually. Yeah, it's crazy. He was actually 2 weeks shy of his 81st birthday as well. But that actually made him the oldest person to play a lead in a Disney film. The previous one before was Richard Farnsworth, who was 79 when The Straight Story was released. I don't know if you remember Straight Story, where he's riding his lawnmower across the States. Yeah, so a very different film. And then the last little bit of trivia is... This is a really weird one. I kind of half noticed it at the time, but I didn't notice it again when I watched it sort of quite recently. But I did find this bit of trivia on the internet, like during the train sequence. So we kind of sort of skipped over the point that like when Indy and Basil are first there, they're looking for, I think, the Lance of Longinus or something. They obviously stumble across the Dial of Destiny. But as part of this, they go into obviously the Nazi loot carriage where it's just filled with all sorts of stuff. And one of the artifacts that's actually kind of just in that carriage is the Holy Hand Grenade from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So if you want to go back and watch that again, you can see it on the shelf. So
that's pretty cool.
There's a little nod towards another classic film. So yeah, and that's Nige's trivia. Indiana Jones.
Great trivs, as always, Nige. Thank you. So, Ito, what did you think? First time watch?
Mine's going to be partially a rant as well, you understand.
Okay.
So this might only be 10 seconds long when you hear it after Smith's edited it to pieces.
After Smith's edited the shit out of there. So, like I said, I saw a lot of online reviews of this. There's a bunch of like YouTube channels that I'm not necessarily subscribed to, but I've watched over the years and I kind of dip in and out of. And they tend to have very strong opinions on a lot of... modern Disney films, especially the Marvel films. Like we've seen Marvel literally do this at the box office, and it's because
do this for those who can't see.
Oh, sorry,
go downwards.
No, sorry, go downwards. I mean, it's no secret that the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is in a very bad state at the moment, and it's no secret, even to the point where people that were once defending the MCU are now kind of going, "Oh, hang on," where Kathleen Kennedy, who's the bigwig at Disney these days, has pushed, so many female protagonists into these roles. So now, like, the Marvel Universe is quite female dominated. Nothing wrong with that, but it's the fact of the kind of characters that are being pushed without kind of any fail. Like they all seem to be perfect at what they do, and a lot of these shows are bombing, and a lot of these YouTube channels review these shows and movies like they were no fans of the Star Wars sequels. Obviously some were, some weren't. I didn't mind. I enjoyed The Force Awakens. The ones that followed, didn't. The Last Jedi I thought was an atrocious movie. But these YouTube channels have all found an audience of hundreds of thousands, millions of people that love their videos because they put out content like the new Lord of the Rings series is going to fail. Here's a reason why. The new Marvel film is going to fail. Here's why. And they do these videos on and on and on. They have these multi-man discussions on and on and on. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the time there is a lot of truth to what they say. But they went in, a group of these channels, and they trashed this movie. Like, before a single set, just the trailer.
Wow.
But they, trashed it like I've never seen any film get trashed before. And I remember taking a step back from one of the reviewers, and he's very popular on YouTube, and it was just like, he said, Phoebe, I remember him saying this, and I remember thinking, wow, you have gone from reviewing a movie to now this is just hate. Because he was I don't understand why they cast Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She is one of the ugliest women I've ever seen. I'm like, hang on, now you're bringing looks into this, when we all know full well, and I've said this numerous times about these kind of reviewers and stuff, that if Phoebe Waller-Bridge walked up to him in the street and said, oh, I find you really attractive, would you want to go on a date? He'd be like, yes, please. Of course he would, because she's I think a very attractive woman.
Yeah.
The fact that they went to that level, I was like, there's a campaign here. There's a narrative that this group of reviewers across all these YouTube channels have formed. If your YouTube channel celebrates in hate mongering, right, and celebrates in this film's going to fail, and that's where your audience is, and you're making thousands upon thousands of dollars or pounds per month making these videos, why would you stop? So at this point, when you see an Indiana Jones movie coming out, you're like, right, I haven't seen a second of this, but guys, here's the narrative we're going to form. So that's why I didn't want to see it, and I sat there and I was just like, wow, this movie was not remotely like the film they described. This is a very, very fucking good film. And if you ask me, it may not be as good as the first three Indiana Jones. I mean, you're talking about some classic movies there. But I know this is a low bar. This is infinitely better than Crystal Skull, I found. I would say, oh God, it's tricky. It's very, very good. The only thing I can fault about it is the length of it. And like we said, like Nige perfectly described, a few scenes that I think you could have truncated this into less than 2.5 hours. I would go 7.5 out of 10.
Nice. Fair enough. It's very interesting.
Well, let's hear from.
This was recorded.
Yeah, us back in time.
When was it?
In the
recorded?
Greek Age. No. This is me and Nige and Adi, and what we thought
in
of
a
it
pizza restaurant,
directly after Indiana Jones.
Oh, this is good. Okay.
Okay. Hello. We have just watched Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'm James Smith. I'm joined by Neil Brock.
Hello.
And first timer on the podcast, Adrian Stephen.
Hello, everybody.
And Adrian recommended Moonlight in the past. So we've just gone and saw Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and we're just going to tell you our future selves, because it's all linked to time travel, what we thought. Nige, what did you think of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and what is your rating just coming out of the film?
Well, It wasn't as bad as I expected it to be, but I did go in with very, very, very low expectations, especially off the back of Crystal Skull. De-aging just doesn't work for me as a concept in film. I can't think of a point it's ever been done well, and again here it didn't really do it. There's some interesting set pieces, some interesting bits. I felt connected to it. It didn't sort of necessarily bore me too much. I was sitting there soaking it in rather than thinking, oh, I'm sat in a cinema, which is for the first time in ages. So for me, I'm going to give it 7 out of 10, which is remarkably high, I think, compared to what it could have been.
7. Nice. Adi, what did you think, considering you fell asleep through 20 minutes?
Yeah, I think I fell asleep through 5 minutes, and it's partly because I'd just finished work and I'm quite tired. I had a beer beforehand, but I think on the film front, I came in with expectations, given it was called The Dial of Destiny, that it would be a bit too ridiculous to be serious, and so it was. I really wanted to like it, but I think a range of things of that made it quite difficult to enjoy. We talked before about the fact that I quite like the romance of the original ones, the Temple of Doom, and The Last Crusade as being, yes, there's some supernatural supernatural stuff in it. But even so, it still felt relatively sort of like in the moment and whatever else. So, but I think when you start to, I think the way they set up the cartoon nature of it, I wanted to like it. I had low expectations, and so it was. I just found it a bit stupid. So yeah, I could have done without seeing it, to be honest. But if nothing else, it was nice to get a 5 minute skip in the peace and quiet. But it's lovely to spend time with you two, more importantly. So I will give it a 5 and no more. I'm sorry to say, but thank you.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's a weird one. Like you, like the original films. Love the original films. The last one, the Skull one, didn't enjoy whatsoever. I think there were moments in this film which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed some of the set pieces. Really enjoyed the. I didn't mind Indy right at the beginning being de-aged. I think the technology is slightly weird, and I didn't.
It was impressive.
It was really impressive, but I thought I didn't mind him being old in the film, which I thought I would. Which sounds really weird, but as soon as they just kind of like swap the dial over and over again, and then the time travel thing just really annoyed me. It turned into Bill and Ted, it turned into Back to the Future. It's kind of like ticking a load of boxes. By the way, love the fact that John Williams did the music. I thought he was retiring or retired from it. So
He came out of retirement just for this.
oh, did he? Came out of retirement just for this film.
Nige's trivia.
Yeah, and Tony Banderas, who I didn't even recognise, and Mads Mikkelsen, who I didn't realise was in it. And yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna go for a 6.5 on this one. I'm a bit torn. So yeah, we'll see what our future selves think when we inevitably do this again on the podcast. Aidy's coming back in.
I'm going to add one more thing into this, and it's more because I'm challenging Nige's rating of 7 for this film.
Yes.
7 is pretty good in my book.
Yeah.
Would you watch it again?
You're going to have to for the podcast.
I think I might eventually, yeah. Just to see whether it's that cinema experience that's given it that artificial boost.
Might be.
But yeah, I think I'd be interested to go back and watch it again. Don't get me wrong, it's nowhere close to any of the first 3, but I don't think it's the worst send-off for Indy.
Truffle. Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Was that your pizza arriving? Yeah.
Delicious.
Okay, and that concludes our the pizzas have come, and we will speak to you in the future, or maybe the past. There we go. That was what we thought directly after the film. What was your reaction to that, Etok?
I would say, but that's my point. Aidy's criticism of the film that's criticism you can give it. You can't give it criticism for the whole Phoebe Waller-Bridge is taking everyone. You know, that's actual criticism. It's like, yeah, I can understand that criticism or your criticism of the film. So, it felt Bill and Ted towards the end. I get that. I get Aidy's point of, it just felt a bit too fantastical. I understand that. That's warranted criticism. Also, I just looked at my spreadsheet. I gave Raiders of the Lost Ark 7.
Oh, wow.
So this film beats Raiders.
You gave Raiders 7,
done
you
that?
fucking lunatic. Not Raiders, Temple of Doom.
Sorry, Temple of Doom. Yeah, Raiders. See, Raiders would be, as would Crusade.
Nige, where are you at now after watching it? It's slightly different to, watching it in the cinema. What's your...
Well, I'll be honest, I was a little bit pissed off when you asked us to review this. It goes against what previous Nige said. I was kind of like... I kind of left it in a happy place. I didn't really want to revisit it.
I told you we were going to do it.
I was worried. Yeah, I know. I was worried I was going to come back to it and be like, oh, it's terrible. What was I thinking? And no, I certainly didn't think that. I didn't think it was terrible, but I've touched upon a few other points why I didn't love it. So I feel it's a bit disjointed. Like you both touched upon the fact it's overly long. It really is.
It really is.
I couldn't even tell you how long the other films are in comparison, but this one felt long, which is never a good thing.
2.5 hours.
Yeah, 2 hours and like 34 minutes. I think Mads Mikkelsen's really good in it. I think Indy, like Harrison Ford's really good in it. I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge is really good in it. I think the little kid's fine. Like, I don't know. It's just quite scattergun, which is a little bit disappointing. John Williams does an incredible job with the score. I like the opening bit. I like Toby Jones. There's a lot of good about this film. It just doesn't feel like a film that fits all that well together. But again, it doesn't drop off the radar. I don't think it's anywhere close to Crystal Skull levels, albeit I was almost half tempted to go back and watch that before we did this, because I do remember being like quite happy with like Cate Blanchett in it, and there was some decent moments in that as well. But anyway, I think for me it does slip a little bit compared to the cinema experience, but not dramatically. It's not to the level of the first three, but I still feel like it's an okay send-off, a good send-off for Indy. So I'm probably going to just drop the 1 point because I hate half marks. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10.
Fair enough. Yeah. That is interesting, isn't it? That, you know, from watching it, either watching it twice or watching it at the cinema and then not the cinema, has changed your rating by a point there. I actually really enjoyed watching this again, and I didn't think I would. I kind of, after like listening back to that, I was like, oh wow, I criticised it a little bit more than I thought I would. Me and my wife watched it together over Christmas after watching the first three, and you know what? I think it probably doesn't have a right to be as good as it is, because of how long it's been,
well said,
of how old there's so much that could go wrong, and I think it's very easy to compare it to the original three. But I think if you take this film in isolation, and you watch it as an event film, I think it's better than a lot of other event films that are coming out at the moment, which like something like the new Mission Impossible or something like that, which came out at the same time. It just feels like a proper old school Hollywood adventure film. However, I still do have, like, the time travel didn't really annoy me as much.
That's the bit that gets you, isn't it?
Yeah,
my reservation.
But I mean. It annoyed me, but it didn't annoy me as much on the second watch because it wasn't such a shock, if that makes sense. So it's a bit of a weird one, but it did stick out a little bit. It wasn't necessarily the time travel, like I said. It was how it was presented. But I do feel like you said, Etok, it's got so much heart, this film, which is quite surprising. So I think I'm just gonna stick with what I've got. I think 6.5 is what I gave it in that, and I can't see a reason to give it any less. I'm not necessarily going to say it's a better experience watching it after the cinema, but I think this film is a lot better than people give it credit for. What am I saying? What's the ending?
I don't know what podcast this is.
Walnut Whip. Love a Walnut Whip.
What did you think of the
film? What did you think of the film? What did you think of Indiana Jones? Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at offradarpodcast. On Facebook or on YouTube and other social media platforms, and please listen again. We need your help. We are looking to grow Off Radar and release more and more high quality content. Please give us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your pod, and why not share with your friends and loved ones?
Help me help you.